A word of warning, this podcast explores graphic and disturbing stories and includes some strong language. It therefore may not be suitable for our young listeners or other folks who may find it disturbing. Hello and welcome to True Crime News, the podcast covering high-profile and under-the-radar cases from across the country every week. I'm your host, Ana Garcia. Our case this week, one would think that if you have an open marriage, jealousy over a lover shouldn't be an issue. I've always wondered if an open marriage could prevent one of the leading motives for matrimonial murders, affairs. Well, not in this case. The husband in this arrangement is dead. The wife has been convicted and will be spending the rest of her life behind bars. We are recording this on Friday, August 22nd of 2025. Our guest today is Rachel Fiset, an attorney, a legal analyst, a dear friend of the show, a friend of mine. Rachel, welcome back. Always great to see you.
It's always so fun to be here. Great to see you too.
I know that you've got a court date, so we're going to get right to it. And we're always so appreciative of our guests because y'all are very busy working attorneys. So thank you so much for making time for us today.
Of course.
Okay, so this case, Rachel, I have always said that jealousy is a very powerful and dangerous emotion. And despite this agreement of having an open marriage between this husband and wife, someone ended up dead.
I think an open marriage is an interesting concept. And I don't always believe the parties, both of them really consent to an open marriage. What I generally think might be happening inside of those, and I don't have one, would be that one person wants it, and so they kind of sway the other person. So I'm always a little skeptical that two parties are in a marriage like that, and they both want to be exactly there. Again, I don't know, but I don't know that it necessarily gets rid of the jealousy inside of that relationship.
Yeah, certainly not in this case. And no judgment here. Listen, if this works for you, you're consenting adults, have at it. But I was just so I was so interested in this component to this case because jealousy is so often that motivator, the affair or the finding out of the affair, the betrayal, all those emotions. And we see it so much with murder cases. And yet it's kind of still in this one. And there are also allegations of dominance and violence, which apparently, according to this couple, that was part of their sexual playing. So it really complicates things.
It really does. And I've done cases like this, defending one party or another in this kind of case, or being involved in some way in a case where there is violence inside of the relationship as part of the sexual activity. And there is a fine line there as to how the dominance works. And there really is a code of conduct among the two parties that are generally consenting to this kind of relationship. And obviously here things got well out of control. But these layers of this kind of relationship really make it harder to unravel what exactly is going on between a couple.
Yes, excellent point. This case is out of Newnan, Georgia, where 55-year-old Cheryl Coe has been convicted of murder and aggravated assault in the death of her husband, Luke Coe III, who was 48. Police say that Cheryl shot and killed Luke after the couple had an argument about how many men she was going to be with that week. This, even though they had this agreement, this arrangement that they could be with other people. Luke and Cheryl met in 2015, shortly after Luke's divorce. The pair bonded quickly, and then they married in September of 2016. Cheryl worked as a manager at a local hospital, and Luke had his own business specializing in road grading and demolition, and his adult son worked with him. Now, Luke and Cheryl were active in this alternative lifestyle, exploring swinging with other sexual partners. They also were involved with bondage, domination. They would invite people over for sex parties. And these hookups between the two of them, they would call them playdates. What is fascinating to me here, that one of the issues is, according to what Cheryl said, she was upset that Luke was sharing details of their arrangement, and she was afraid that somehow this would reflect badly on her and affect her job. To which I would say, had you not thought of this first?
I think there is that component, but again, there's a code of conduct. So, what is their code of conduct? We don't discuss this outside of our arrangement. Now, when you're bringing in third parties that you're not particularly familiar with, I think it's a risk that things get out. But if they're far removed from a professional career, it could be seen as a betrayal in these ways, or it could be seen as a cry for her to say, I don't actually want to be doing this in our relationship. So there's a lot that you've got to unpack. Like, are both parties truly engaged, or is one doing what the other one wants to do to keep that relationship by any means necessary?
Sometime around 2020, the pair agreed to open up their marriage. And apparently that has led to some complications. And a year later, the marriage fell apart. Now, a series of text messages in the days leading up to the shooting showed that the couple had been fighting about the arrangement itself. This really is a glimpse into what you've been suggesting, Rachel, that maybe one was more dominant than the other. As we understand, it can never be equal. So Cheryl suggested that they end their open marriage to eliminate these conflicts that they were having. But Luke reportedly wanted to keep it going, but wanted to add more ground rules. He wanted to rein in Cheryl about how many men she could be with. Now, I would make an argument here, counselor. Is it an open marriage, or is it, if you keep adding guardrails to it, then it's really not, right?
And is it open for one but not the other? So it becomes, this is the kind of thing that I think these rules evolve, and you're not eliminating all of those natural human emotions you might have about your partner. What are you really consenting to? And can you consent to an open marriage in advance? Maybe that sounds good, but once you actually are in practice, there are these things that really anger you about your situation. So many layers to a relationship like this. I think that can veer off track.
Oftentimes with relationships, it's not just jealousy, but it's the resentments. And when those start building, they too become very powerful. Let's get to the day of the shooting. According to Cheryl, they were home this day on June 23rd of 2021, but they were spending some time separately here. She told officers that her husband was working in the garage with his adult son while she was enjoying a summer evening on the couple's porch. Now, this story's going to change a few times, so listen to these parts. Some remain consistent, but the details do change. She said it was a lovely evening and that she drank 4 to 5 Angry Orchard hard ciders. And then after almost finishing the 6-pack, she told investigators she took an anti-anxiety pill, Klonopin, and then she went to bed at 7:15. How early is that for a swinger? Okay, it's summertime, and this is important. 7:15, it's summertime, it's daylight. Keep this in mind. Really important to the narrative here. Okay? So she claims about 10 minutes later, amazing, she falls asleep so fast, that she's in her bed and she's woken up by the noise of her bedroom door violently swinging open. She thought it was an intruder, couldn't make out the person. Hello, it's daylight. And she claims she reached for the gun in the nightstand and fired. And then she realized it wasn't an intruder, but it was her husband, Luke.
This story doesn't add up to me. So many holes. I think starting with a 7:15 bedtime.
Right?
So many holes. And your first thought when somebody comes home, namely when you live with other people that also share your bedroom, can't be, is there an intruder here?
Right.
A lot here.
Open up your eyes and you can see. Now, if you said to me that it was, you fell asleep at, I don't know, 11:30 at night, 11:45, it's dark, you really can't see anything, that's a little bit different. That is a little bit different in the story. And then there's the issue of timing. So she said she fell asleep at 7:15, but by 7:30, she was already calling 911. And she tells 911, oh my gosh, I've made a mistake. I accidentally shot my husband. Luke was still alive. Apparently, she was trying to save him. She claimed that she was giving him CPR and putting compression on his wound. Paramedics who first arrived on the scene said, yes, indeed, Luke was still alive, and he managed to say, I can't breathe. Now, there is police body cam video that is absolutely fascinating if y'all haven't seen it. Okay, this is during the whole thing, and they're at the house. 2 points here. One, it is clearly daylight. It's like we're not in the middle of the night here, so because you can see everyone so clearly. The other thing is, the police say that she formed herself into a ball into a fetal position on the lawn of their home, and you can see the police officer taking her by the hand and pulling her up and having her stand up straight to finish the conversation, which was just bizarre. But then again, something traumatic has just happened if you are to believe her version of events initially. Okay, so, she gives them her version of the story, and poor Luke actually ends up passing away that night at the hospital. So this goes from perhaps what could have been an accidental shooting to now a suspicious death. It's a totally different investigation. Okay. On the police body cam video, Cheryl clearly tells officers, I was just trying to protect myself. This also will be part of the narrative that kind of changes, right? Because first she says it's an intruder. Later on, she's going to change her story and say, oh yeah, I was protecting myself, but I was protecting myself against Luke. And this all evolves. So you don't know what's true.
Inconsistent stories are what the police are absolutely looking at her over and over again. There's holes to start with. There's holes at 7:15, but as she evolves into finding what she thinks is the right landing or the right story for her is where the detectives are, absolutely looking at her. And they know she shot him, so they don't have to determine who shot who. They know that much. So it's already under investigation at that moment. Now they're just paying attention to what she's saying.
And there was something that was evident from the very beginning and then would be confirmed by the autopsy, that the bullet wound on Luke appeared to be one that happened at such close range that either the weapon was literally touching his body or very close, based on how the wound looked. So immediately, the cops are saying, hold on a second. You said it was an intruder bursting through the door. This does not appear to be a gunshot wound, that a shot that was shot across a room, but literally close up. She will modify her story after that.
There is not much she can do after that. With that fact, with a close-up shooting, it feels like she's in control of what is happening. And that is why I think the self-defense begins to fail, as does the intruder stories out the window. So you're not waiting till intruder is right next to you, particularly when someone is right next to you and you're saying it's an intruder in daylight, in your bedroom, and it's your husband. So that's gone. That intruder story is gone. Now, were they in a fight? What was going on? Were they in some sort of role play? Now the police have narrowed their search as to what happened.
This is the next version of Cheryl's story, according to police. Then she says, I knew it was Luke, but I shot him in self-defense because she said Luke had dragged her from the bed. She claims that when she broke free, she managed to wrestle, get her gun out from the nightstand, and protect herself. Cheryl says she fired a warning shot, causing Luke to retreat. And then she said that made Luke even more angry, so much more so that he charged at her. And that's when she shot him again. She said she wasn't trying to shoot him, just to warn him off, but she shot him and he ends up dying. Well, police still don't believe this version of events. So she is charged with murder. Now, here's the rest of the investigation. So, police start looking at the messages and communications between the couple to figure out what, if anything, was going on in the days or weeks leading up to this shooting. So, remember we were talking about how there was friction about whether she was with too many men, and that seemed to be at the heart of the conversation and argument the day of the shooting. So, this is so fascinating. In the days leading up to Luke's death, Cheryl said, and this is corroborated by the text messages, she asked Luke for permission. Is that part of the whole dominance thing? I have to ask permission?
I think it is. Yeah, that must be their rule.
Okay.
People have rules. They have rules inside of these relationships. So if she needs permission, they've likely set that up.
I love, Rachel, that you have so much insight into these relationships. I mean, I know you're an expert on a lot of things, but this one has really floored me today.
You never know what the law is going to bring you.
Apparently not, Rachel. Apparently not. Okay. So Cheryl asked Luke for permission to see a different partner later in the week, which apparently meant that she wanted to have sex with two men. Luke questioned that. This is in the exchanges. And Cheryl responded that she could do both on the same day and then still be with Luke. So that'd be partner 3. And then she finished the text message with LOL, laughing out loud. Well, Luke was not laughing. He didn't think this was funny. And this really upset Luke. He responded to her with, this really turns my stomach. Buddy, you have an open relationship here. What is it?
I mean, I'm reading into that she is stretching the boundaries of their relationship. She has asked that they not have an open relationship and to change some things. So through time, I think she is maybe testing him. Is this how open you want to be? And he still wants to be open, but maybe he doesn't want her to be as open. So I don't think we're getting rid of the jealousy component. I think these are two people that are not, very clearly not on the same page, obviously, as we know how this relationship ends. But I think throughout this relationship, this resentment is building. And that's a fairly extreme thing in a lot of circles to suggest to your husband, I'm going to have sex with 3 people in one day. But I think she's stretching it and saying, like, you're asking for this. We're in this. Okay, is this what this is? And she's trying to rewrite some of the rules, perhaps, but maybe in an effort actually to dial him back. I'm just reading into what it sounds like could very easily be going on here.
It really sounds like they're fighting for control over this relationship, which is always an issue with a relationship, control. That's what it boils down to. So, she says, look, we can end this open relationship in these communications. And Luke says, no, I'm going to continue the open marriage. But we want to have a discussion about the ground rules moving forward. Okay, so things are changing. They're in flux. So, that was part of the fight. The other part of the fight, as I shared a little earlier, is that apparently Luke had vented to a friend about problems with the open marriage. Everything comes with it. Nothing is easy, people. Relationships are not easy, open or closed. And so Cheryl demanded that he take screenshots of this conversation that he was having with a friend of his about their relationship because she wanted to know what he was telling people. And she was worried that being a swinger would affect her job. And he said, no, I'm not going to take screenshots. So, okay, so now the fight's evolving, different components, but all over this really the same theme here. Okay, so then Luke says to Cheryl, I need some space. The two had reportedly planned to talk it out that night of the shooting. But when Cheryl came home from work, as we said, Luke was in the garage, so she was waiting for him. That's when she's sitting on the porch and waiting. She gets tired. She's drinking her cider and she goes to bed really early. She said she waited an hour. And again, this version kind of matches the first, sitting there, she's drinking, she takes the anti-anxiety medication, and then she goes up to the bedroom. Okay. I'm moving forward here because this gives us more insight. Cheryl ended up being tried twice here. The first trial ended in a hung jury. My guess is they couldn't figure out this relationship. This is really complicated. Like, what happened?
I agree with you. I think that they couldn't figure it out. Her changing stories maybe made some sense to one person or so on that jury, and she connected with jury members in some way that obviously, led it to a mistrial, because the facts, again, as we recount them, it is hard to know what's going on. We know she shot him. I think it's hard to say the shooting wasn't intentional, and that she didn't know who she was shooting. So I think we have those facts. So the intruder story is kind of lame. The second story feels more believable. So there does feel like there could be some sort of self-defense component to it. And maybe if she'd started there, she'd feel more credible. And maybe she was afraid to start there because she shot him and she knew who he was. So in her mind, it may have been easier for her to say this other story when the truth was slightly closer to this self-defense in some way. And that may have connected with a juror.
And she does end up taking the stand in her own defense, which is always so tricky. But I always say, if the person can answer the questions that don't make sense, a jury will understand, not saying that they will agree that you shouldn't be punished for your crime, but things may make sense. And so when she took the stand in her own defense, she explained that in this relationship, she was the submissive one. And she explained that that was her role in the marriage and also in the sexual parts of their marriage. But here's something else. So the prosecution brought up these Facebook messages in which Cheryl described herself in these situations, saying, quote, that the women are in charge. So she's telling the jury one thing. Her writings are telling the jury something else. So this is, as we've said, this is a complicated relationship, and maybe things change. Her attorneys said that the messages between the husband and the wife showed that the husband was the dominant one. Maybe in her asking permission to have, sex with other men. I don't know. She then tells the jury that Luke was aggressive with her and that she didn't like it at all. And she gave an instance. The Daily Mail reports that one time they were walking on the porch steps and that he pulled her leg from under her as she was walking down the stairs, and it caused her to tear a muscle in her buttocks, and that required surgery. And she said that their bondage practices had become violent and that she had asked him to stop the escalation of this, but he wouldn't. And then the Times Herald reports that Luke would choke her and slap her breast to the point of bruising, and she said, "I did not enjoy the pain." That kind of is giving you some insight into bondage gone too far.
Right. And I think, at least in the first case, again, you're feeling sorry for her. She doesn't know how to get out, perhaps, of this relationship. I would even argue like the women are in charge. She probably is trying to take back some of her power, if she really is the submissive one in this relationship, by saying, I'm in charge of what I do in the bedroom and how I conduct my life. And I choose to be submissive in this kind of relationship. I mean, there's all kinds of power plays in a BDSM relationship. And if both parties are not consenting every step of the way, you still have assault and sexual assault. And once you pass beyond the line of consent, she could have been serially raped by him. We don't, again, know where her boundaries were, had she set them, and if he was abiding by them. And I think there is a trail here to say that it had gone too far and he didn't care.
Yeah. This is so complex as far as trying to figure out how violence with domination, where is the line where that becomes abusive? And I don't.
It's at consent. It's at consent. And that's once you stop consenting. And it's hard for a lot of people to imagine what this relationship looks like because it's so beyond the boundaries of so many people. So it's hard to kind of get into that headspace. But once someone stops consenting, it passes into abuse.
Right.
And that's why these relationships are grounded in rules and a code of conduct. And so if she is serially abused, in her mind, no matter what went down that night, there may have been a real self-defense component to it.
Yeah. Yeah, and that could have complicated things without question. Now, the police officer who was one of the first responders testified that he spent an hour with Cheryl after the shooting and that she never cried one time. Okay. People react very oddly to trauma. But I hear what he's saying. If this was truly an accident, or if it was self-defense because you were so scared, it's hard to believe that you wouldn't cry. But would you say that of a man? I'm sorry. Would the officer say this about a man?
I think no, he would not. And B, I think people are in shock in a variety of ways, and it's hard to attribute how one should be acting if they're truly in shock.
Yeah, exactly. Now, just to give you an idea of the span of the two trials, because they were really back to back, which I don't usually see, such a short period between the two. So the initial trial was in March of this year, and that, of course, was a mistrial. Then the second jury got it in August, earlier this month, which is extraordinary, and they did come back with guilty verdicts for malice murder, felony murder, and aggravated assault. Following her conviction, Cheryl was sentenced to life without the possibility of parole. Prosecutors said that Cheryl never showed any signs of remorse for what happened to Luke, which kind of lines up with that officer saying, she wasn't even emotional crying at that time. I don't know what to read into this other than I think this case really gives us a look into, if you remove the barriers within a marriage or a relationship where you can go ahead and be with other people, okay, now you have this freedom. Does it make it less dangerous within the bounds of the relationship? And in this case, this is a very unique case. It showed us that no, the issues of control and power and jealousy still existed for them.
I think, in fact, you could argue they were heightened.
Yeah. Yeah.
They were engaging in conduct that actually heightened all of those emotions, in an instability of what's happening inside of that home.
Wow. Just really a very, very sad case, a very, very sad case. Once again, a person, there'll never be justice for him. He's dead, and she will spend the rest of her life in prison. Just so sad. It is time for our comment section. These are the crime cases that you all are talking about on social media, and here's our producer, Will Updike. Hey, Will, how are you?
Good. How's it going, Anna?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. Great to see you, Rachel. Thank you so much for coming in today to help us out. We got an interesting case. I'm calling it a case that just really proves that money can't buy common sense. The case comes out of St. Pete Beach, Florida, where police have released body cam video that appears to depict a man who had recently won the $167 million Powerball assaulting an officer. So, sort of days after this, life-changing sum comes into his life appears to potentially be again changed. So, a little background on the suspect here: 50-year-old James Farthing. He won the Kentucky Powerball back in April off of a $2 ticket with his mother, Linda Grizzle. There's a very sweet picture of James with his mom and his girlfriend, 42-year-old Jacqueline Fightmaster. They're holding up this check. Everything seems great, but the celebration would kind of be short-lived. Days later, James and his girlfriend, Jacqueline, were at the Tradewinds Resort in St. Pete Beach, Florida. Like I said, they're kind of living it up. And apparently there was an altercation at the bar there with another guest. So this is where the trouble kind of really starts. It's getting out of hand. Now, allegedly, Jacqueline and James were both pretty intoxicated here. According to Jacqueline's arrest affidavit, she was trying to fight other patrons at the bar while yelling and screaming and making incoherent statements. So at some point here, the resort staff gets law enforcement involved. And you don't see this on the body cam, but allegedly what police are saying is that James punched this other man in the face, and police then arrive on the scene. Sort of that happens right before you see police sort of arrive on the scene in the body cam video. And this other man who was involved in the altercation is on the ground. He's saying that James has punched him. Police are subduing him and like trying to get a hold of sort of what's going on here. And then from the body cam footage, it looks like James is attempting to kick perhaps this downed man and hits the officer. And the deputy obviously yells at him, "Hey, you kicked me." And so cops are then, they're trying to subdue James now. This situation has escalated probably more than it maybe needed to. And according to the body cam footage, it looks like he's trying to run. They end up tasing him. He falls to the ground. And he's kind of saying something to the effect of like, he doesn't want to go back to jail.
Now I have a question, Will. Does any of this have to do with his winnings? Are these like two absolutely separate things? Like he won the money and then a few days later allegedly goes berserk?
Well, so that's the thing. It's unclear if money somehow was involved in this argument. It's unclear what this initial altercation started at. If I was just to make a guess, and again, these are just alleged, these are just charges. I think, maybe they were celebrating a little bit too hard. Maybe they were being less than polite with some of the other patrons around them or some of the other people around them. I think we all know the typical sort of phrases about how money can change a person, and it's not always for the better. So I think there might have been some aspect of that going on here, but it's not like this guy was trying to rob him or anything like that.
Right.
But it did occur like I said, they won this back in April. This occurred a couple weeks later after he had actually collected the sum. He and his mother had collected the sum. So they're, he's out sort of living it up. And then this happens. James and Jacqueline there have both been arrested in the brawl. She was charged just with misdemeanor disorderly intoxication. Now, the case against James is ongoing, but he is facing charges of battery of a law enforcement officer, simple battery, and obstructing or resisting an officer without violence. And that case is ongoing. He has pleaded not guilty. He has a preliminary hearing coming up here in a couple of weeks. But it's just perplexing to me because it's like the best thing happening that could possibly happen to you, and then certainly one of the worst. But I gotta say, Rachel, what kind of defense can he purchase with this? Because I realize it is a large sum of money, but the allegations, something against an officer, pretty serious, I would imagine.
Well, I want to start with, you're talking about my hometown, and I'm very familiar with the Tradewinds.
Okay.
My goodness, Rachel, this is like the secret life of Rachel
are these
Fiset.
types of incidents common? Are these commonplace at the Tradewinds?
So you're at a beach bar. That is a beach bar. It is a lovely area. It's a bit sleepy, but one can get quite overserved. Normally, in that environment. Particularly maybe they'd been in the hot sun all day. So I think what we have here is probably strong intoxication. And in his relaxed environment. So I think he can afford to try to get a plea deal and minimize any kind of time he would be spending. He's going to have to spend some of that newfound money on classes for sure, probably some alcohol classes, that kind of thing. They're going to have to treat the underlying issues that they might see, anger management, all of that. I think my defense would be to work with the DA and try to just minimize and pay as much as you possibly can here for your way out of this, and watch your P's and Q's and stay away. I think he'll be banned from the Train Winds, which is really a very lovely place. So he's gonna have to head down the road, probably to the Don Cesar. But
Not the Don Cesar.
yeah, I think you're just negotiating. There's not a lot to go to trial with here. I think he's gonna lose if he continues to fight it.
Right. And
Yeah,
so
like
much
I
of
said,
his winnings, right? So much of his winnings are now going to go to his defense. So ridiculous. So unnecessary.
Yeah, it does seem like a very case tough to defend because, like I said, tough case to defend because, like I said, they have released this body cam footage, which doesn't look great. I would say like the only thing that's like maybe in his favor is I watched the footage several times. It doesn't appear to me that he's trying to assault the officer. It seems like he's trying to assault this other man. Again, maybe not great, but it looks like he's trying to assault this other man. He's intoxicated, sort of misses, and ends up hitting the officer. Again, not great, not a great situation, but that would be the one thing where I'd be like, I really, if you could really issue a heartfelt apology, pay out the nose a little bit, say, I'm really sorry, I never intended to assault an officer.
But you're still intending to assault someone.
Somebody,
so on
yes.
the law, you have an issue. It doesn't matter on the law. Oh, I didn't mean to assault her. I meant to assault him. The law works like, okay, you intended to assault. That's all you need. It doesn't have to be specific. Now,
That's fair.
maybe that takes away the additional kind of upcharge of officer, but that's where the plea agreement comes into play is how about just plain assault, not assault on an officer, which will minimize the time a bit.
And what kind of exposure are you looking at for something like that?
In Florida, hard to say. I think he's probably facing about a year. It depends on
Okay.
if it's a misdemeanor or a felony. That usually is in line with about a year's time. Assault on an officer will be a felony, so that's where the legal play comes into play. Is let's do a misdemeanor. Can we get 6 months house arrest? That kind of thing.
Yeah. People did not really have a lot of sympathy for this guy in the comments, which is understandable. Lady Blue said can't fix stupid. If I get that sum of money, you're just never gonna see me again. Like you're just never gonna see me again. I'm
Oh.
gone. I'm traveling Europe. I'm living anonymously. I'm changing my phone number. I don't want anybody asking me for any money. I'm gone. I've disappeared. I'm a ghost.
Okay.
It was lovely to know you all. Know that I'm living my best life, just hopping around, traveling every day, eating great food and doing nothing of substance. Wandering Life said karma will get you. Now, this is an interesting one because there's like two opposite ends of the karma scale here. Like, I would think or I would hope, if you and your sweet elderly mother are coming into this sum of money, maybe you've done some right karmically in your lives. Maybe, I know that that's not exactly the way the lottery works, but
No,
that's my
it doesn't.
hope. That's
No.
like the hope in my soul. And then you have this opposite end of the things, which is like, yeah, I mean, I guess if that sum of money or that, that sort of windfall like went to your head and things went sideways, it doesn't bode well for, how you might spend the rest of the money, which is always sort of concerning. You hear so many terrible stories about lottery winners and how it completely ruins their life. Again, would not happen to me. So if
Just world.
if karma is listening, if I end up winning, that would not happen to me. Tony L said, looks like he can afford a pretty good lawyer, which, yeah, I mean, I think that is probably like one of the better things, I guess, going in his favor is he can sort of, I don't think you're going to buy your way out of this one, but you can, minimize some of your exposure, I think, which is a better outcome. Anna, what are you doing with your Powerball winnings?
Oh, I'm taking a long trip. I'm paying off the house, I don't know, fun stuff like that, I think.
Yeah, Rachel.
Not too exciting. I'm not
Rachel, are you gonna head back to the Tradewinds Resort?
I might spend a day or two at the Tradewinds, but I might spend more time internationally. I don't even know how much it would change. I'm in the daily slog of raising kids and all of
Yeah.
it, how it would change vastly, but it might be in my retirement where the real change occurs.
Yeah,
Right.
that makes
Sometimes
sense.
you can't get away from life sometimes,
Yeah.
Will. We're envious of you. Like, I know you're going to leave everyone behind, but are you going to leave both your dogs too?
No, they'll come with.
What about Eleanor?
They'll come with. They can come on the plane. It'll be a private plane.
Okay.
Oh, you're making a point.
All right. Just
There's
checking.
some boat and
Yeah.
plane in my future.
I'll never have to go through TSA again.
Okay, that's worth it. I'll
That
take it.
alone. So that'll do it for this section. Anna, did you have any comments you wanted to share?
Yes.
Today?
So, as you know, we have a vibrant community on YouTube, and I try to read as many of yours as I can and respond. This was just very kind from Miss Doggy's Lucky Life. Just like that name, saying that we're the best at covering these cases, that we are open-minded, but very informative. Thank you, Anna. Thank you for those kind words. This is an interesting comment. This is about a case from last week, where we often talk about all the time, like, just divorce the person, don't kill the person. And then so many times children are really the ultimate victims here. And this person, I just thought, really said this in such a great way. I said, you know what? I'm going to borrow your phrases here. So this is from Lisa Dexter. And she writes, when I see cases like this, apparently these people don't love their children more than they hate their spouse, because the children always go without either parent and they don't care as long as that guy is dead. And that's so interesting. You hate more than you love your kids. I just love that comment. I thought it was spot on. A different way of looking at, rage and anger and family violence. So thank you.
You must see that all the time, right, Rachel,
Yeah,
where it
yeah.
becomes more about winning than it does like.
Exactly.
At all costs. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Remember what you're fighting for, and
Okay, well.
don't hurt anyone along the way. Anyways, that'll do it for this week's comment section. You can leave those over on our YouTube community page or post now. I think it might be called something different. You can also reach out to us across all social media anytime. That's at My True Crime News. But that'll do it for this week. Until next week, don't do crime.
Rachel, it is always a pleasure having you on. Where can people find you, follow you?
Our law firm is zfzlaw.com, and I'm there to be reached out to at all times, and on Instagram at Law and Rachel.
Excellent. Always a pleasure. You can find me at Anna G News, Anna with one N. Again, you can find everything we do at My True Crime News. We've made it really simple for everyone. You can find this podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. As you know, I read your comments, try to read as many as possible. Also, you can subscribe to our newsletter at truecrimenews.com. So until next week, this is True Crime News, the podcast. I'm your host, Ana Garcia. Crime never stops, and neither do we.